For a small country barely the size of Switzerland, Costa Rica has made tremendous efforts to protect the environment, setting aside 1/4 of its land area as natural parks and nature reserves. The tropical climate and varied topography have fostered exceptional biodiversity, with wildlife from both North and South America. From the peaks of volcanoes down to the Pacific and Caribbean shores, wildlife has flourished. Costa Rica is located midway on the isthmus that has joined the two continents North America and South America for 15 million years. The east-west collision between two tectonic plates, the Caribbean plate to the east and the Cocos plate beneath the Pacific Ocean to the west, has created this narrow strip of land dominated by the perfect cones of its many volcanoes. Many of these volcanoes are active, while others are dormant. The continuing tectonic activity has formed a chain rising to an altitude of 3,800 meters. Ocean winds drive the warm, damp air up from the plains and onto the slopes. The rising vapor cools, and as it cools, it condenses into clouds. Between 1,000 and 3,000 meters, the climate has produced a biotope typical of tropical mountain areas, the cloud forest. The tallest trees form a canopy some 20 meters above the ground. Lush vegetation with twisted trunks and contorted branches covers the entire area. All along the mossy trunks, plants stretch skyward, rising from darkness, seeking light for photosynthesis. Warm springs are a reminder that we're on the edge of a volcano. The remarkable turquoise color of the river is a natural phenomenon due to the chemical reaction between calcium carbonate and the sulfur in the water from deep underground. The entire area is filled with the stench of rotten eggs. Everywhere in the cloud forest, water is indeed the source of life and the key to luxuriant plant growth. Overcoming the lack of space on the crowded forest floor, some plants called epiphytes, like orchids and lichens, grow on the surface of trees without reaching the ground. They gather minerals from the humus that builds up at the bases of branches, and they filter rainwater. Between the ground and the top of the canopy, there is a full range of vegetation levels. Every large tree is an ecosystem in its own right, providing a great variety of habitats and food for the animals of the forest. The black-faced solitaire builds its nest in moss, half concealed by the vegetation. This male sings to keep in contact with his mate. But there's another song in the air. One of the loudest, most penetrating songs in the cloud forest comes from the three-wattled bellbird. The male's head features 3 wattles of skin, and his beak opens wide. The bellbird is mainly a fruit eater, but it could intimidate many a smaller creature. The bellbirds and other birds living in the cool cloud forest are often reclusive and hard to see. On the other hand, there's no problem watching the many species of hummingbirds when they display their plumage with its characteristic metallic sheen. Bright-colored passerines, like this couple of flame-colored tanagers, have to beware of birds of prey. Luckily for them, this turkey vulture is a carrion bird, and even if it's hungry, the tanagers would be far too fast for any vulture to catch them. It should come as no surprise that these mysterious forests are home to one of the world's most beautiful birds. Watch the long green tail feathers protruding from a hollowed-out tree trunk. These mountains are home to the mythical resplendent quetzal, once considered divine and now classified as near-threatened. The female, recognized by her short tail feathers and gray breast, is not far from the nest. Inside the long green tail feather shows the male is at work. The female immediately flies in to replace her partner in warming their two hatchlings, who are only a few days old. The male can shake out his feathers before flying off to hunt. The female watches for the father to return, when she'll have to leave as the nest is too small for the both of them. About 10 minutes later, the male is back with a grasshopper in his beak for the chicks. They'll need a few more days before they can eat fruit like their parents. In the meantime, the female quetzal can rely on her partner, who conscientiously carries out his fatherly duties. At 2,000 meters in altitude, another couple of quetzals is ready to mate. The nesting season runs from April to May. If they are perching side by side outside the nest, it's because the male is still working on the nest. He hasn't finished hollowing out the trunk of a dead tree to make it more comfortable. The female is quite demanding and won't accept the nest until it's absolutely perfect. The female checks on how the work is coming along. Will she approve the nest and finally take possession? The male has worked hard and looks exhausted. But his partner has flown out, signaling there's more work to do. So the male bravely resigns himself to finishing the job. The female quetzal remains unruffled, confident of getting her way. This is surely a part of their mating game. Throughout Latin America, the resplendent quetzal is a symbol of freedom. Every attempt to raise quetzals in captivity has failed. Quetzals allow themselves to die if deprived of their freedom. Preserving the quetzal means preserving its natural habitat. Creating ecological corridors to link forests together would also promote greater genetic mixing between populations. The cloud forest is home to many other intriguing species. What is this strange thing that looks like a furry snake poking around in the underbrush? It's the tail of a white-nosed coati. Coatis are omnivores. They're quick and clever and constantly in search of food. This one's foraging under the leaves for small vertebrates, insects, nuts, and fruit, and nothing will distract him. Their excellent sense of smell helps them locate their prey, no matter how small or how well they're hidden. Their sharp claws do the rest. Coatis find most of their food on the ground, but they're ready to climb the trees as well. The best fruits might demand more of an effort, but coatis have perfect balance. Male coatis tend to be solitary, except during the mating season, but females live in small family bands with their young. This social structure provides protection for the young pups, despite the fact that adults are constantly caught up in the search for food. Because of their mobility and voracious appetite, coatis play a major role in the ecosystem. After digesting fruit from the trees, they disperse the seeds far away. Some seeds germinate better after transiting through their digestive systems and being dropped to the ground with natural fertilizer. This is one of nature's ways of spreading the forest and promoting plant biodiversity. The smaller trees are frequently visited by variegated squirrels, so called because of their multicolored fur. Unlike squirrels in other countries, variegated squirrels do not store food for later because there's no winter in Costa Rica. There's a dry season when it still rains, and a rainy season when the sun still comes out. In short, because there's never a season without a fresh food supply, there's no reason to store food for later. This also means that forgotten stores won't germinate to form new trees, as can occur in Europe or North America. Some of the most remarkable trees in the forest are the various species of strangler fig. They begin as seeds dispersed by birds and germinate on other existing trees. They grow branches to capture light and send their roots down to the ground, wrapping around the support tree. This strangles the host tree, which eventually dies and decays, leaving a Baroque-shaped columnar tree around a hollow core. These tall trees make perfect perches for mantled howler monkeys, so named because of the loud calls they use to communicate and defend their territory. These impressive calls can be heard for miles around. The sound is amplified by the hyoid bone near the vocal cords, which is enlarged in the male mantled howler. Any conflicts among the mantled howler monkeys are handled simply by howling. At the very least, this spares them the need to fight. This monkey tends to be pretty lackadaisical, largely owing to their diet, which is primarily composed of leaves that have low nutritional value and are hard to digest. They prefer tender shoots, which are less likely to contain toxins. But first of all, they have to reach the shoots. Mantled howler monkeys spend the rest of their time napping. Despite the damp midday heat, the young howlers have the time and energy to play. The rules are simple. Just hold on and try not to fall. Heliconia, this flower plant that grows in forests, is highly nutritious and rich in glucose. It's a feast for this hummingbird, a white-necked jacobin attracted by its red petals. During the day, hummingbirds have to feed every 10 minutes or so, and their daily sugar intake has to be roughly half their body weight. That's because of their rapid metabolism, with a heart beating nearly 1,000 times a minute. Without food, a hummingbird would die in less than 2 hours. When the rain begins to fall, filling the flower's corollas with sweet water, the feast becomes even more intense. Hummingbirds could add more protein to their diet, but the small insects they'd have to catch tend to vanish when it rains. Between 2 meals, hummingbirds perch in order to conserve energy. They can fly backwards or hover in place. This helps them avoid collisions when several are attracted to the same flower. Yet, while they can weigh less than 10 grams soaking wet, a hummingbird's life is an extremely active one. The other birds seem to dislike the rain and take shelter as they wait for the sky to clear. But the rain can continue for days, and they simply have to feed. The smallest passerines, like this olive-backed euphonia, have no choice but to face the rain. This male red-legged honey creeper is all decked out for the mating season and can't resist the temptation of a bunch of bananas. In the heat and rain, fruit spoils as soon as it ripens. Birds have no trouble breaking the soft skin. The most aggressive birds, like this blue-gray tanager, manage to get the best spots. The cloud forest gets over 2 meters of rainfall a year, making it a paradise for frogs. This green and black poison dart frog, like other members of the family Dendrobatidae, have brightly colored bodies to warn potential predators that they are toxic. The poison in their skin is only defensive and is secreted only when they are under stress. Still, the toxin is strong enough to kill a man. One hypothesis is that dendrobats accumulate poison from their prey, especially ants and centipedes. And then, suddenly, the rain stops. the sun is greeted by a multitude of bird songs. But this blue-throated toucan has no time to join the symphony because he's totally focused on feeding his chicks and their mother. The female hollowed out the nest. She's currently incubating 4 eggs, and it's the male's turn to feed the family. He flies between fruit trees and the nest, removing waste matter during each journey. Keeping the nest clean is essential because the couple will be using it for many years to come. A little lower, at an altitude of 1,200 meters, the temperature climbs swiftly with the sun. This is when the male cicadas sing, or rather, make a strident sound by vibrating their tymbals, which are membranes on their abdomens. The males have recently molted, casting off their exuvia, and now they're trying to attract females. Without this distinctive sound, how could they find the right mate among the 35,000 known species of insects identified in Costa Rica? While beetles with their flashy colors are easy to see, some grasshoppers are perfect at camouflage as they seek to remain invisible to predators. Sometimes it's the other way around, with brightly colored prey and a well-camouflaged predator. Like most dendrobrats, the blue jeans dart frog is poisonous, and so has no reason to be discreet. Indeed, to attract a mate, the male's approach to courtship seems to be the same as the cicadas. The louder, the better. In the jungle, you have to do everything you can to get attention when you're barely 2 centimeters long. A little further, a young 9-banded armadillo is already wide awake. This nocturnal animal is really hungry as it emerges from its burrow in the twilight. Guided by a powerful sense of smell, it's searching for earthworms, small reptiles, and especially insects. Discovering an anthill whets its appetite even more. Fortunately, it's protected from ant bites by its keratin carapace and the thick skin of its belly. Lower down, at an altitude of 1,000 meters, the cloud forest gives way to a sunnier, warmer biotope. This is the tropical rainforest. Here, annual rainfall does not exceed 2 meters. And during the dry season, from December to April, the sun may shine several days in a row. Here too, sulfur terraces are a reminder of the volcanic origin of the subsoil. The continuous emission of hydrogen sulfide from these vents has scarred the vegetation. But the sulfur carried by the water settles quickly near the source, and the clearer water downriver can irrigate the forest. Abundant water and generous sunlight have led to a unique variety of plants. The flowering trees burst into bloom, each in turn as the seasons change. Plants of the bromeliad family, which often grow on other trees, have large flowers with a huge variety of colors and shapes. With 1,200 species, orchids are among the most common flowers. Their beauty, fragrance, and colors compete to attract birds and pollinating insects, particularly butterflies. Butterflies suck up nectar through their long proboscis, which is sometimes as long as their abdomen. Rubbing against the stamen, the male part of the flower, the proboscis picks up pollen, which will then pollinate the pistil of the same flower or another flower of the same species. Like bee populations, butterfly populations are declining worldwide, and this is a major concern. The Earth has 2,500 species of flowering plants, and 85% of them depend on insects for pollination. This pale owl butterfly has nothing to fear. To discourage predators, its wings are marked with an ocellus, or eye spot, that mimics the eye of a reptile. The upper side of the wings of this Pallades blue morpho are bright blue, but the underside is brown to blend in with the surrounding vegetation when the butterfly is at rest. If there's one species that doesn't want to blend in with the environment, it's this keel-billed toucan. Its beak is 15 centimeters long, and it can reach even the most distant fruit. And it helps with grooming, which sometimes toucans do with obvious pride, especially during the breeding season. Yellow-throated toucans may have fewer colors, but their bill is just as effective for smoothing their feathers. In a natural environment teeming with insects and parasites, birds spend much of their time scratching, cleaning, and preening their plumage. While some birds' appeal is based on their bright colors, other birds, like the great potu, use camouflage. The nocturnal great potu sleeps by day, mimicking a tree branch. Even if it may be hard to sleep through the squawking of the Montezuma or Apendula and their acrobatics. The brown-hooded parrot is much more discreet. These small parrots live in groups of a dozen or so individuals, but they can also get away from the others to feast on the best trees. And this fruit is attracting a lot of interest. The trees in poorer health are infested by various larvae, mollusks, and insects, to the delight of the cinnamon woodpecker, who's willing to work to capture them under the bark. The most insatiable feeders are possibly the black-handed spider monkeys, who vary their diet by moving from tree to tree. Up to the age of 3 months, young monkeys travel only on their mother's back, holding on with their prehensile tail. They won't break free until they're a year old, after their mothers have taught them to recognize edible leaves, fruit, and insects. Despite their natural curiosity, young black-handed spider monkeys must avoid toxic plants. Scientists believe that this learning effort and the memorization it involves have contributed to developing the intelligence of spider monkeys. They are actually ranked third for intelligence behind the orangutan and the chimpanzee. For the youngest ones who aren't yet capable of picking fruit on their own, there is the temptation to steal. despite the likelihood of being caught. Pinching someone else's food would require both skill and tact. Larceny may have ended in failure and in being scolded, but there's nothing more comforting than mother's milk. Each female bears just a single baby monkey every 2 to 4 years. The rate of reproduction of spider monkeys is too low to offset the effect of poaching and deforestation, especially in the countries neighboring Costa Rica. The black-handed spider monkey is therefore considered an endangered species. Living at altitudes below 500 meters and capable of reaching the age of 50, scarlet macaws are less endangered. The female can lay 2 or 3 eggs a year, providing that she accepts a mate. Couples spend lots of time bickering, and the sound is deafening for this red-eyed frog, which only wants to sleep in peace during the day. During delousing sessions, the slightest mistake in grooming can cause a fight. Despite the quarreling, this couple will stay together all life long. The ceremonial smoothing of feathers helps to maintain the flame. But once again, beware of clumsy beaks. The red-eyed tree frog is now fully awake, but won't go hunting for insects until after sunset. It keeps a discreet watch on its surroundings, with semi-transparent eyelids over its big red eyes. As twilight fades, the calm returns. Even this family of howler monkeys, high in a tree, are dining in silence. Better not let the big cats, ocelots, cougars, or jaguars know where you are before falling asleep. The night is filled with the sound of insects. Predators are resting or waiting in ambush. The most alert creatures are the spiders, particularly tarantulas, on the lookout for prey near the entrance to their burrow. Tarantulas eat insects, reptiles, and small rodents by injecting digestive enzymes to liquefy their flesh before sucking out the liquid. Woe to any creatures that vibrates their web. Leafcutter ants, which provide nutrients to the fungi they feed upon, are unlikely to be caught by tarantulas because they carefully follow the path of their own pheromones, leading back to the anthill. The kinkajou is mainly a fruit eater, but is ready to use its long tongue to catch ants, or maybe a tiny frog. Many nocturnal animals play it safe by blending into the background. Whatever happens, this will be a good night for some, while others won't live to see the following day. Barely a few meters above sea level, coastal plains are crisscrossed by channels and marshes. There are no roads across this muddy maze, abandoned to tropical humidity, and that's good news for the wildlife here. At daybreak, this black-crowned night heron stands sentinel over the surroundings. Better to stand above the water, where an American crocodile is watching and waiting. Here there are species that cannot coexist with humans, such as Baird's tapir. This one is resting, unaware of the looming danger. This is also one of the last sanctuaries for the jaguar. The big cat, whose territory once spanned both North America and South America, is now confined to a few pockets of impenetrable jungle. Sightings are extremely rare. Still, it can sometimes be spotted catching the sun on the banks of a river, always on the lookout for creatures crossing its territory. The black vulture and the white-headed capucin both prefer to get away, more or less discreetly, while the going is good. Luckily for them, the jaguar is sated and only wants to rest in peace and quiet. Despite weighing 70 kilograms, the jaguar moves in silence, and its spotted coat can quickly vanish in the vegetation. There are other big cats prowling on the forest floor. It's much smaller than the jaguar, but the ocelot is also very discreet. While spending much of its time perched on branches, the ocelot prefers to hunt on land. It obviously cannot attack a tapir, but takes on all kinds of rodents, small reptiles, and even careless birds. Snakes often remain motionless to watch their prey, and they move in silence. This bird snake, a member of the colibrid family, is searching for bird eggs. But its tongue detects a smell much stronger than any bird. Some 20 collared peccaries are moving in the bird snake's direction. Snakes have poor eyesight, but their forked tongues let them locate the origin of any scent using the sense of smell, the same way that we can locate sounds using both ears. Peccaries are not a threat to the snake unless they sense they are in danger. The snake, nevertheless, prefers to wait till the peccaries have gone before continuing on its way. Now that there's no danger of being trampled, the reptiles can come back into the open. This young black spiny-tailed iguana is looking for insects. Like all iguana species, it will switch to flowers, fruits, and leaves, but only after reaching adulthood. For the time being, it still needs a high-protein diet. These sleepy little bats won't be competing with the iguana for flies. But because insects are scarce, it falls back on some vegetarian fare. When the iguana reaches adulthood, its skin darkens and it grows dorsal spines. Green iguanas are the most impressive lizard species in Costa Rica. They live near rivers and streams. The male green iguana can easily grow to 1.5 meters in length. His dragon's head can certainly impress smaller lizards. Reptiles spend much of their time thermoregulating, that is, adjusting their body heat by shifting their exposure to the sun. It's complicated because their scales don't provide much insulation from the heat. Unluckily for them, the absolute stillness of smaller lizards makes them easy prey for herons, especially this boat-billed heron. This is the common basilisk lizard. Only the male has the characteristic dorsal crest. They're famous for their ability to run on water, using their long hind legs and toes. They stay close to rivers and streams, watching for mangoes to ripen on the trees. Their tiny teeth can't bite through the skin of the mango, so they feast on overripened fruit. The green iguana has more powerful jaws, so that's less of a problem. Still, there's lots of competition for overripe fruit that's bursting out of its skin. Failure means the iguana has to settle for leaves, which aren't as sweet for the time being. Green iguanas may look awkward, but they're good swimmers and excellent climbers. Their powerful toes and sharp claws grasp branches as they climb for food, cool fresh air, and peace and quiet high in trees. But they don't get much of a friendly welcome from the scarlet macaws. Macaws live in groups without a hierarchy, but they have a pecking order for eating. The oldest macaws come first and get the best locations using their beak like a third foot. Only when the older ones fly off can the younger, less experienced macaws move to the same trees to pick the remaining nuts. Cracking nuts and removing the contents is a skill that young birds are quick to learn. Between two morsels, they squawk to let the rest of the group know they're there. The Central American squirrel monkey seems a bit stressed out by the racket. This monkey is also looking for fruits, especially to feed the 2-month-old youngster. The squirrel monkey is the smallest of the 4 species of primates living in Costa Rica, smaller than the howler monkey, the black-handed spider monkey, and the white-headed capucin. Brown-throated sloths, on the other hand, hardly move at all, whether alone or carrying their young. They sleep 13 hours a day, and the first thing they do when they wake up is to take a rest. The reason is their extremely slow metabolism. They take 15 to 20 days to fully digest the leaves they eat. They have a bowel movement only once a week, and that's the only time they leave the tree to go to the ground, though no one actually knows why. In any event, the sloth seems perfectly content with its existence. There's not much that could keep it from sleeping. Certainly not the deep courting song of the male great curassow, who's trying to attract a mate. But the female would have to be ready to listen, unlike this white-lined tanager that's hunting a pretty large spider. Here, a male Cherry's tanager is preening his feathers while keeping an eye on his female. Soon, it will be nesting time for the species, and that means building a cozy nest. That's also why this pale-billed woodpecker has spent the past few days hollowing out the trunk of a dead tree. The pecking seems to have awakened the proboscis bats that were sleeping in a nearby tree. This bare-throated tiger heron shows that we can't be far from a mangrove estuary, where a singular natural phenomena occurs. For several hours, with each rising tide, rivers flow backwards, away from the sea, as the rising tide floods the river's mouth. And beyond the beach, we see the rolling waves of the Pacific Ocean. The shoreline all along the wild coasts of Costa Rica is much like the rest of the country, a meeting place for nature. Here, volcanic rock plunges into the ocean, and the sun's heat gathers up the water that'll be carried to the mountain peaks. This is the intertidal zone where marine wildlife and terrestrial fauna meet. Hermit crabs scuttle into new shells, and painted ghost crabs, which burrow underground, are prey to the seabirds overhead. Shorebirds and wading birds feed at the river's mouth. This little blue heron begins its meal with some freshwater crustaceans and needs some liquid to help wash down the crayfish. A few quick strides bring the herons to saltwater fish, fish that can't escape their sharp beaks, even if they swim towards the open sea. It's here on the original beaches that the animal populations from North and South America first met and mingled, in the great melting pot of Central American wildlife. This is where the green turtle struggles to lay her eggs in the sand in order to perpetuate the species. These shores are sanctuaries where the green turtle hatchlings scramble into the ocean to face their destiny. These are the beaches where other animals will nest in the sand or dig their burrows and see the sunset over the Pacific Ocean, where we can hope that nature will be preserved today and flourish tomorrow.